I didn't know my life would split into before and after because of a single name whispered in the dark. It was a Saturday night. Our daughter was asleep down the hall. The house was quiet in that warm, safe way that only a family home can be. My husband Luke had kissed me earlier in the kitchen while I washed dishes. We had laughed about something small and stupid. It felt normal. Then, in the middle of an intimate moment, the kind that's supposed to make you feel chosen, he said another woman's name. Not mine. Emma. I froze. My body went still before my mind could even catch up. I pulled back and stared at him in the dim light. His eyes were closed at first, like he hadn't even realized what he'd said. Then he saw my face. "What did you just say?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "You said her name." He sat up slowly. "No, I didn't." But he had. I knew he had. Emma wasn't just some random name. Emma was his first love, his childhood sweetheart. The woman he had dated for 3 years before me, the one he always described as the one that got away. And now her name had slipped out while he was holding me. He tried to laugh it off, said maybe it was something we'd heard on TV, said I was overthinking it, said I was tired. But the way he'd said it, soft, familiar, almost tender, it wasn't an accident. That was 3 weeks ago. Since that night, I haven't been able to touch him without wondering who he's thinking about. And what I discovered after that was worse than any name spoken in the dark. Because a name is just a slip. A secret life? That's a choice. And I was about to find out just how long he had been choosing her over us. Before that night, if anyone had asked me to describe my life, I would have said it was ordinary in the best way. My name is Maya. I'm 34. I work in project coordination for a mid-sized construction firm. Nothing glamorous, but stable, predictable, and honest. I like lists. I like plans. I like knowing where things are going. Luke used to tease me about that, said I carried my life around in color-coded calendars and sticky notes. I'd tease him back and say someone had to keep the real world running. Luke is 35. He works in marketing, the kind of job that's half creativity, half charm. He's good with people, always has been. The type who can walk into a room and leave with 3 new friends and a job lead. When we met, that confidence felt like sunlight. We met 8 years ago at a friend's birthday party. I remember standing in the kitchen, holding a plastic cup of soda, pretending to be very interested in a bowl of chips, when he came up and said, "You look like someone who'd rather be anywhere else." I laughed because it was true. We talked for hours that night, about work, about music, about how neither of us liked crowded bars, but kept ending up in them anyway. He walked me to my car, texted me before I even got home, asked me out the next day. For the first year, everything felt easy. Not perfect. Real life never is. But warm and steady. He was attentive. He remembered small things. He brought me coffee when I had early meetings. He listened when I talked about work stress like it actually mattered. There was just one shadow in the background. Emma. He told me about her early on. They'd been together for 3 years before me. High school sweethearts who tried to make it work into adulthood. He always called her his best friend before we were anything else. They broke up, according to him, because they grew in different directions. But she never really disappeared. In the beginning, he texted her a lot, took her calls at odd hours. If something good happened, sometimes he'd tell her first, then me. When I noticed, he said, "We're just friends. We've been in each other's lives forever. You don't need to worry." I told myself I was being insecure. I didn't want to be that girlfriend, the jealous one, the controlling one. But there were moments that sat wrong in my chest. Like the night, about 6 months into our relationship, when she called him at 11 because she was having a hard day. He went into the bedroom and stayed on the phone with her for 2 hours. I sat alone on his couch, the TV murmuring to itself, feeling like a guest in my own relationship. Or the way he'd smile at his phone sometimes, a small private smile, and then look up at me like nothing had happened. The breaking point came in our 2nd year together. We had plans to go to my company's holiday party. It mattered to me. My boss would be there, my team. It was one of those unspoken career moments. That afternoon, Emma called. Her grandmother had passed away. Luke looked at me and said, "I have to go be with her." I said, "Tonight?" He said, "She needs me." We fought, really fought. I told him I couldn't keep competing with another woman for his emotional attention, that I wasn't asking him to erase his past, but I was asking him to choose his present. He accused me of being jealous, of not understanding what it meant to support a friend. I accused him of treating me like an option. In the end, he agreed to step back from her. Fewer calls, fewer messages. Just occasional check-ins, he said, because I'm choosing you. I believed him. A year later, he proposed. I said yes. When he told me Emma had cut off contact completely because she couldn't handle being just friends now that he was engaged, he was devastated. He tried to hide it, but he didn't do it well. He barely slept, barely ate. I held him and told myself this was just the end of a chapter, just grief over a long history closing. We got married, we bought a house, we had our daughter, Callie. And for a while I thought the past was finally where it belonged. In the past. If I'm being honest, things didn't fall apart overnight. They thinned, quietly. After Callie was born, life became a rhythm of responsibility. Diapers, daycare, mortgage payments, work deadlines. Luke was a loving father, playful, patient, the kind who could turn bath time into a pirate adventure. I never questioned his love for our daughter. But somewhere between sleepless nights and career promotions, something subtle shifted between us. He became distracted. At first, I blamed stress, marketing campaigns, client pressure, office politics. His job could be intense. He started taking more late calls, said certain projects required privacy. Sometimes he stepped outside to talk. Other times, he'd tilt his phone screen away without even realizing he was doing it. It was small, so small I almost felt foolish noticing. Then there were the absences. I have to stay late. Meeting ran over. Grabbing a quick drink with the team. He never used to be secretive about his schedule. Suddenly, it felt like I was filling in blanks. One night, about 2 months before the bedroom incident, I borrowed our shared laptop to print a document for work. When I typed into the search bar, I saw a familiar name in the browser history. Emma. Not once, multiple times. Her social media profiles. Her LinkedIn. Even an article about a nonprofit event she'd attended. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. People look up exes sometimes, I told myself. Curiosity isn't a crime. Nostalgia isn't betrayal. But it didn't sit right. That same week, I noticed him smiling at his phone again. That same soft, private smile I remembered from our early days. Who's that? I asked lightly. Just work stuff, he said quickly. Too quickly. I didn't push. Instead, I started observing. He began going to bed later than I did. Said he needed alone time to decompress. I'd wake up at 1 a.m. and see the faint glow of his screen in the living room. Once, when I walked out unexpectedly, he locked his phone almost instinctively. Sorry, he laughed. Reflex. Reflexes usually have reasons. Then there was the intimacy, or lack of it. We still had sex, but something felt absent, mechanical. His eyes would close more often. His attention felt elsewhere. And then, that night, when he said her name, it suddenly reframed everything. After that, I couldn't unsee the patterns. I remembered how devastated he had been when Emma cut contact years ago, how he described it as losing his best friend. I remembered how he only fully settled into our engagement after she disappeared from his life. A horrible thought started forming in my chest. What if he never really chose me? What if he chose me because she removed herself? And what if she was back? I tried to convince myself I was spiraling. That motherhood had made me paranoid. That marriage just goes through phases. But my instincts kept whispering, this isn't nothing. And 3 weeks after that whispered name in the dark, I finally decided I needed more than intuition. I needed the truth. I didn't confront him right away. I wish I could say it was because I was calm and strategic. The truth? I was afraid of what I might find. We've always had an open phone policy in our marriage. We both knew each other's passcodes. We used each other's devices when convenient. It was something we'd once been proud of. Transparency. But trust makes you lazy. 3 nights after he said Emma's name, I lay in bed pretending to sleep while he showered downstairs. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. This is crazy, I told myself. Then another voice answered, or this is survival. When the water started running, I got up. His phone was on the kitchen counter charging. My hands were shaking when I picked it up. I unlocked it. The home screen looked normal. Text messages clean. Call log short and harmless. Too harmless. Luke was many things, but he wasn't careless. If something was happening, it wouldn't be sitting in plain sight. I opened his app folders, work apps, finance apps, then one labeled utilities. Inside were 2 apps he had never mentioned using. WhatsApp, Snapchat. My stomach dropped. I opened WhatsApp first. There it was. Emma. The conversation went back months. Not weeks, months. At first it was innocent. Hey, long time. How have you been? I heard you moved back to the city. She had moved back 6 months ago. 6 months. They'd started with coffee. Just catching up, he wrote. Then lunch. Then dinner. Then the tone shifted. Emma, I've missed you more than I ever admitted. Luke, I never stopped thinking about you. I felt something inside me fracture. They talked about what if. What if they had tried harder? What if they hadn't broken up? What if timing had been different? And then came the messages from 3 weeks ago. The week he said her name in our bed. Emma, yesterday was everything I remembered. Luke, being with you felt like coming home. Emma, I hate that you have to go back to her. Her. Me. I kept scrolling. There were messages arranging hotel rooms during my work hours, references to afternoons when Callie was at daycare, photos I won't describe, intimate, undeniable. But the worst part wasn't the physical betrayal. It was what he said about me. Luke, Maya's a good person. She deserves stability. I just settled because I thought you were gone. Emma, you don't have to live like that forever. Luke, I know. I had to sit down at the kitchen table because my knees were buckling. Settled. I was the safe choice. The fallback. The stability. He wrote that being intimate with me felt comfortable, but not electric. That I focused too much on responsibilities. Mortgage, savings, Callie's college fund, instead of living in the moment. Living in the moment. Like sneaking into hotels while your wife packs your daughter's lunch. My hands stopped shaking at some point. A strange calm took over. I took photos of the conversations with my phone. Every message, every timestamp, every photo preview. When the shower turned off, I placed his phone exactly where it had been and went back to bed. He came upstairs 10 minutes later, slipped under the covers, kissed my shoulder. Everything okay? He whispered. I stared at the dark ceiling. Yes, I said, because I needed to see how far this would go. The next day, I called a divorce lawyer during my lunch break. Her name was Janet. She was direct, composed, unshakable. When I showed her the screenshots, she didn't react emotionally. This is clear evidence of adultery, she said. Document everything. Secure your finances. Don't confront him until you're ready. But I couldn't wait. That night, after Callie was asleep, I asked him to sit down. We need to talk about Emma, I said. He rolled his eyes. Maya, not this again. I placed my phone on the coffee table and slid it toward him. He looked at the screen. His face drained of color. First confusion, then panic, then anger. You went through my phone, he snapped. I didn't raise my voice. Yes. That's insane. That's a violation of privacy. A violation? I asked quietly. You met her at a hotel while I was at work. He stood up, started pacing. This happened because our marriage was already broken, he said. You're distant. You're always stressed. You care more about spreadsheets than about us. I stared at him. You told her you settled for me. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said, I didn't know what I wanted. There it was. I was the placeholder while he figured out whether he preferred his past. He said he needed space, said he was confused, said he had to think. Then he did something that stunned me more than anything else. He packed a bag, and he took Callie with him to stay at his sister's house for a few days. At 9 p.m., on a school night, because he needed space. I stood in the doorway watching my husband carry our daughter out of the house we built together, and I realized something cold and sharp. He wasn't confused. He had already chosen. The house was too quiet after they left. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. Callie's toys were still scattered across the living room floor. Her pink backpack hung on the kitchen chair where she dropped it earlier. A half-colored picture of a princess lay on the coffee table. He hadn't even thought about tomorrow's lunch. I stood in the middle of our living room and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Clarity. Luke had walked out with our daughter because he needed space, but he hadn't once asked what I needed. He texted later that night. She's fine. We're at Lisa's. We'll talk when things calm down. Calm down. As if this were a disagreement about dishes. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat down with my laptop and began organizing everything. Screenshots, call logs, dates, financial statements. If he wanted space, I would use it wisely. The next morning, Callie called me from his phone. Mommy, when are you coming to Aunt Lisa's? She asked sleepily. My throat tightened. Soon, sweetheart. Are you okay? Daddy said you and him are just talking about grown-up stuff. Grown-up stuff. Yes, baby, I said softly. Grown-up stuff. After I hung up, I allowed myself to cry. Not because I missed him, but because our daughter didn't deserve to be collateral damage in his midlife nostalgia. That afternoon, he finally called. I don't want this to blow up, he said. His tone was careful, measured. It already has, I replied. He sighed. Emma and it just happened. We reconnected. I was curious. It wasn't supposed to go this far. You told her you loved her. Silence. I was confused, he said again. No, I said quietly. You were deliberate. He bristled at that. You don't understand how it feels to reconnect with someone who knew you before responsibilities, before pressure. I laughed. A short, humorless sound. Before your wife and child? That's not what I meant. But it was exactly what he meant. He told me he hadn't decided what to do yet, that he needed time to figure out if this was just unfinished business or something real. So I'm a holding pattern? I asked. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, my voice shaking for the first time, is you testing a new life while keeping this one as backup. He didn't argue. Instead, he shifted blame. You've changed, Maya. You're always tense, always planning the next 5 years. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a line item in your calendar. That one hit harder than I expected, because part of me had wondered the same thing. Had I become too practical, too focused on stability? Had I stopped being spontaneous? For a split second, I almost apologized. Then I remembered the hotel messages. He didn't cheat because I made spreadsheets. He cheated because he wanted to. I asked you to choose me years ago, I said, when Emma first became a problem. You made me cut her off. I asked you to commit. I did. No, I corrected softly. She cut you off. You just adjusted. He had no response to that. The conversation ended without resolution. He said he'd bring Callie back in a few days. Said we'd reassess. Reassess. As if our marriage were a business proposal. When Callie returned 3 days later, she clung to me tightly. Daddy was on his phone a lot, she said innocently, talking to his friend. I swallowed. What friend? The one who makes him smile. Children notice everything. That night, Luke came back too. Not with apologies. With conditions. I think we should try counseling, he said, but I'm not promising I'll cut Emma off immediately. I need to figure out what I feel. I stared at him. You want to attend marriage counseling while actively seeing another woman? He flinched. I'm not seeing her like that anymore. Did you tell her that? Silence again. That was my answer. I realized then that the shock was fading, and something steadier was replacing it. He thought he was choosing between two women, but I was starting to understand that I had a choice too. What made everything worse wasn't just Luke's indecision. It was the fact that he wasn't alone in it. 3 days after he moved back in, still confused, still refusing to cut Emma off, his sister Lisa called me. Maya, she said carefully, Mom knows. My stomach tightened. Knows what? About Emma, about everything. Of course she did. Luke's mother, Caroline, had always adored Emma. Back when Luke and I were dating, Caroline would occasionally mention Emma at dinner. She was such a sweet girl. Such a shame they didn't make it. Some people just have history, you know? History. As if history outweighed vows. Lisa hesitated before continuing. Mom thinks maybe this is fate. Fate? I repeated. She said some loves come back for a reason. I laughed under my breath, but it wasn't funny. So now my husband wasn't just confused, he was being validated. 2 nights later, Caroline showed up at our house unannounced. Luke opened the door. I heard her voice immediately. Concerned, sympathetic, dramatic. She walked straight into our living room like she owned the air in it. Oh, sweetheart, she said to Luke, cupping his face. This must be so hard for you. For him. I stood across the room, invisible. Caroline turned to me with a tight smile. Maya. Caroline. She sat down without being invited. Luke told me everything, and I just think we all need to approach this calmly. Calmly. My husband had been sleeping with another woman for months. Emma has always been important to this family, she continued. You can't erase that. I'm not trying to erase anyone, I said evenly. I'm asking my husband to honor his marriage. Caroline sighed as if I were the unreasonable one. Marriage is complicated. People reconnect. Feelings resurface. Luke sat there silently while his mother rationalized his betrayal. Are you suggesting I accept an affair because it's nostalgic? I asked. Caroline's voice sharpened. I'm suggesting you don't force him into a corner. Men don't respond well to ultimatums. Men. As if Luke were a fragile creature who needed careful, emotional handling. I looked at him. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell her to stop. That silence hurt more than anything she said. Later that week, things escalated further. I received a message from an unknown number. It was Emma. I think we should talk, woman to woman. My hands went cold. I didn't respond. She messaged again. I didn't mean to hurt you. Luke and I just have unfinished history. Unfinished history, I finally replied. History doesn't excuse betrayal. She answered almost immediately. He told me your marriage has been distant for years. So he had been rewriting our story. He said you're more like roommates now. He said he never felt fully chosen. The audacity of a man who was actively lying to both of us. I showed Luke the messages that night. You've been telling her we're basically over? I was venting, he muttered. Venting? I snapped. You told her you settled for me. He ran a hand through his hair. You're twisting it. I'm quoting you. The argument spiraled. He accused me of humiliating him by involving a lawyer. I reminded him he humiliated himself in a hotel room. He said I was cold, I said he was dishonest. And then he said something that shifted everything. I don't know if I was ever fully over her. The words hung in the air like smoke. 8 years, a marriage, a child, and he wasn't sure. That night, he slept in the guest room. The next morning, I reviewed our joint accounts as part of my preparation with the lawyer. That's when I noticed it. Small withdrawals. 200 here, 300 there. Always near the downtown district, near the hotels listed in the messages. I totaled them. Over $9,000. Our money. Callie's savings money. Mortgage cushion money. Spent on their electric afternoons. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. I deserve something for myself, he said. Something for himself? Like betrayal was a spa treatment. You stole from our family to fund an affair. It wasn't stealing, he insisted. It was marital money. Marital money, I said quietly, means shared responsibility, not secret hotel bills. He didn't apologize. He just said, "You're making this uglier than it needs to be." As if I had created the ugliness. As if I had conjured Emma back into his life. Meanwhile, Callie started having nightmares. She crawled into my bed twice that week. "Are you and Daddy mad?" she whispered one night. I stroked her hair. "We're working through things." She nodded, but her eyes were worried. Children feel instability like weather, and our house was storming. Caroline began texting Luke daily. "Follow your heart. Don't let guilt trap you. You deserve passion." Passion. As if stability were a flaw. Lisa called me again, apologetic. "I don't agree with Mom," she said quietly, "but she thinks Emma is the one who got away." "Apparently so does Luke," I replied. The emotional pressure mounted from every direction. His mother validating him. Emma romanticizing him. Luke reframing himself as a man torn between two destinies. And me? I was the practical wife. The planner. The stable one. The safe choice. But something inside me was changing. The woman who once begged him to choose her years ago? She wasn't here anymore. I wasn't going to compete. I wasn't going to perform vulnerability to keep him. If he wanted fantasy, he could chase it. But I would not beg to be selected. There's a specific kind of silence that follows emotional exhaustion. Not dramatic, not explosive, just hollow. That's where I found myself 2 weeks later. Luke was still in the guest room. We were living like strangers sharing a mortgage. Conversations reduced to logistics. Who's picking up Callie? Did you pay the electric bill? Your mail's on the counter. No more how was your day. No more casual touches in the kitchen. No more us. He was still seeing Emma. Not openly, but not secretly either. When I asked if he'd cut contact, he said, "I need clarity." Clarity, as if our marriage were fog. One night, I overheard him on the patio. "I just need more time," he said softly into his phone. The softness in his voice told me who it was. I stood behind the sliding door, watching the outline of my husband speaking tenderly to another woman. And something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. I realized I was grieving a marriage that had already ended. Later that week, I attended Callie's preschool recital alone. Luke said he had a work emergency, but when I checked our phone bill later, yes, I was checking now, I saw a 47-minute call to Emma during recital hours. Callie stood on stage in a paper butterfly costume, scanning the audience. When she spotted only me, her smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. That half second will stay with me forever. After the recital, she asked, "Daddy didn't come?" "He had work," I said. She nodded, but she didn't believe me. That night, after putting her to bed, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried harder than I had since discovering the affair. Not because he loved Emma, but because he was willing to miss our daughter's moments while chasing electric. The lowest point came 3 days later. Emma posted a photo on social media. It wasn't explicit, just a sunset view from a rooftop bar, but Luke's reflection was visible in the glass behind her. She captioned it, "Sometimes the right story just takes time to come back around." My hands went numb. She wasn't hiding anymore, and he wasn't stopping her. I confronted him with the screenshot. "Did you know she posted this?" He glanced at it and shrugged. "I can't control what she posts." "You can control whether you're in her reflection." He didn't answer. Instead, he said something that sliced deeper than anything before. "I don't know if I was ever fully happy." Fully happy. As if happiness were a permanent state instead of a choice you recommit to daily. I felt small for a moment. I questioned everything. Was I too structured, too practical, too focused on the future? Had I become boring? I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror that night and barely recognized the woman staring back. Dark circles under her eyes, shoulders tight with tension, a marriage dissolving in slow motion. For the first time since this began, I felt genuinely alone. Not angry, not strategic, just tired. I considered something I never thought I would. What if I fought harder? What if I changed? became more spontaneous, more carefree, less spreadsheet. What if I tried to be electric? But then another thought followed immediately. Why should I perform for someone who already left? Around midnight, Luke came into the bedroom. He stood awkwardly near the door. I don't want this to end, he said. Then end it with her, I replied quietly. He hesitated. That hesitation was the final answer. Because love that requires negotiation with a third party isn't love. It's indecision dressed up as depth. That night, I stopped hoping he would choose me. Instead, I started preparing to choose myself. The moment clarity arrived, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork. 3 days after the rooftop post, I met with Janet again. I brought updated screenshots, financial records, proof of hotel payments, and the recital call log. She reviewed everything calmly. You have a strong case, she said. Adultery, financial misuse of marital funds, documented emotional instability around the child. I nodded, but my chest still felt heavy. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. You don't need revenge, she replied. You need protection. Protection. For the first time, the situation stopped being about heartbreak. It became about stability. Callie's stability. Mine. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Lisa called me. I need to tell you something, she said. Her voice sounded conflicted. Mom has been talking to Emma for over a year, she continued. Not just recently. They reconnected long before you knew. I closed my eyes. So this wasn't spontaneous. No, Lisa admitted. Mom always thought Luke and Emma were endgame. She never really accepted your marriage. There it was. The quiet sabotage. The validation. The encouragement. The follow your heart messages. This hadn't just been nostalgia. It had been cultivated. Lisa hesitated again. I heard Mom tell Emma once that Luke felt trapped, that he'd regret marrying for stability. Trapped. I thought of the house we built together, the daughter we planned, the savings accounts we managed responsibly. Stability wasn't a trap. It was effort. I thanked Lisa for telling me the truth. After that call, something inside me fully shifted. Luke wasn't torn between two great loves. He was indulging a fantasy built by nostalgia and enabled by a mother who preferred a different daughter-in-law. That evening, I asked him to sit down. No yelling, no tears. Just steady. I'm filing for divorce, I said. He blinked. What? I'm not competing anymore. He looked stunned. You're overreacting. No, I said calmly. I reacted. Now I'm deciding. His posture changed immediately. Maya, wait, we can fix this. You had months to fix it. I was confused. You were comfortable. Silence. You think Emma's going to give you passion forever? I asked quietly. Passion doesn't survive secrecy. It doesn't survive real life. He looked uncertain for the first time. Not romantic, not conflicted, uncertain. Because suddenly, he wasn't choosing between two women. He was facing consequences. What about Callie? He asked. What about her? I replied. You missed her recital to talk to your unfinished business. His jaw tightened. I love my daughter. Then act like it. For the first time, I saw guilt flicker across his face. Real guilt. I don't want to lose you, he said. You already did. Not because he loved Emma, but because he didn't protect us. I handed him the papers. He didn't sign immediately, but he didn't fight either. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was no longer waiting. Waiting for him to choose. Waiting for him to wake up. Waiting for him to realize. I had realized, and that was enough. Divorce doesn't explode all at once. It unfolds, like dominoes tipping in slow succession. The first shift came when Luke realized Emma's fantasy didn't translate well into daylight. Once the papers were filed, the secrecy disappeared. The adrenaline vanished. What was left was reality. Court dates, financial disclosures, custody evaluations. Not rooftop sunsets. Emma stopped posting romantic captions. Instead, her tone online became vague, defensive. Privacy is important. Some stories aren't for public consumption. Apparently, passion doesn't thrive under subpoena. Luke moved into a small rental apartment across town within 3 weeks. He told me it was temporary, but I could see the recalculation happening behind his eyes. Rent, utilities, child support, legal fees. Electricity costs more when you're paying for 2 households. Meanwhile, the financial review uncovered the hotel expenses, over $9,000 of joint funds used during the affair. When Janet presented that documentation during preliminary proceedings, Luke looked physically uncomfortable. Emma wasn't there, because Emma wasn't part of the marriage contract. He was. Caroline tried to intervene at first. She called me once. You're destroying your family over pride, she said sharply. No, I replied. Your son did that. She insisted Luke had just been confused, that men sometimes need time to process unresolved feelings. I listened quietly, then said something I hadn't said before. He missed Callie's recital to talk to Emma. There was a pause. Even Caroline didn't defend that. Family gatherings began shifting too. Lisa stopped inviting Emma to anything. Some cousins quietly distanced themselves from Caroline after learning she had been encouraging contact behind my back. The narrative of fate didn't hold up well against hotel receipts. And then reality hit Luke in another way. Callie struggled during her first overnight visit at his new place. She called me at 8:30 p.m. "Mommy, I want to come home." "You're safe, sweetheart," I said gently. "Daddy loves you." "Is Emma there?" The question cut deeper than any legal document. "Yes," Luke admitted later when I asked. "She's important to me." "But she's not her mother," I said quietly. He didn't argue. Over the next month, Luke began canceling some of his evenings with Emma because Callie was having trouble adjusting. The electric romance had to compete with bedtime routines and preschool meltdowns, and electricity flickers when responsibility enters the room. Emma, according to what I later heard through Lisa, grew frustrated. "She didn't sign up for this much baggage," Lisa told me. Baggage, meaning his daughter. The irony was almost cruel. Luke had chased passion to escape feeling trapped by stability. Now he was discovering that stability is what allows passion to survive. The custody arrangement finalized with me receiving primary custody. Luke had alternating weekends and one evening midweek. He didn't fight it aggressively, not because he didn't love Callie, but because he knew the court didn't look kindly on documented affairs funded with marital money. Caroline grew quieter. Her posts about true love finding its way back stopped. Instead, she occasionally shared vague quotes about respecting boundaries. Boundaries, the same ones she once dismissed. Luke's life didn't implode overnight. It narrowed. He had less money, less access, less control. And for the first time since this began, he looked tired. Not romantic, not conflicted, just tired. One evening, during a custody exchange, he lingered on the porch. "Maya," he said, softer than before, "I didn't think it would end like this." I studied his face. Neither did I. But endings don't arrive randomly. They build, brick by brick, choice by choice. "I hope you're happy," I said. He hesitated. "I'm figuring it out." That was honest, at least. As for Emma, the excitement dulled quickly. Without secrecy, their relationship had to function in daylight. Schedules, shared expenses, parenting constraints. It's easier to be someone's escape than someone's everyday. Within 2 months, they were arguing publicly at a restaurant where one of Luke's coworkers happened to see them. Apparently, passion doesn't pay rent either. Meanwhile, something surprising happened in my own house. Peace. Not dramatic happiness, but peace. The tension evaporated. The constant uncertainty was gone. No more checking phone bills. No more decoding moods. Callie and I built new routines. Saturday pancakes. Thursday movie nights. Evening walks with her tiny hand tucked into mine. One night she looked up at me and said, "It's quieter now." She meant emotionally. Children, no. The marriage ended. But my stability didn't. And that's the part Luke never understood. The divorce was finalized on a gray Tuesday morning. No drama, no shouting, just signatures and a quiet hallway outside a courtroom. Luke didn't look triumphant. He didn't look devastated either. He looked ordinary, like a man who chased a feeling and discovered it wasn't built to last under real weight. Emma is still in his life, at least for now. I don't ask for updates. I don't stalk social media anymore. I don't need to. Because the question that once kept me awake, was I ever enough, doesn't haunt me anymore. I was never the problem. I was the stable choice, the steady love, the woman who built a home instead of a fantasy. And stability isn't boring. It's strength. Callie is thriving. She still asks questions sometimes, but she laughs more now, sleeps through the night, doesn't scan crowds searching for someone who might not show up. As for me, I've rediscovered parts of myself that were buried under anxiety. I still love lists, still color code my calendar, still plan for the future. But now I plan for a future that doesn't depend on being chosen. People have asked if I would ever take Luke back if things fell apart for him. The answer is simple. No, because I don't compete for a seat at a table I helped build. If someone isn't sure about you, let them be unsure, somewhere else. Love isn't electricity. It isn't nostalgia. It isn't unfinished business. Love is consistency, protection, showing up to the recital. If someone has to decide between you and their past, they've already given you your answer. And sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is stop waiting to be chosen. Instead, she chooses herself.